Go. Let's see if it's all working. Seems to be. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm John Miglosh for the WDMA, and we're going to be talking about marketing today and testing today. So hang on to the end. I think the best stuff is always at the end, if you can stand it. And give it a like, give it a share. Podcasts are available every day, except not lately, not this last week, but there's hundreds of them out there. So you can find out about all kinds of marketing topics, and you can just flip to the middle. I do that with some of the podcasts I listen to. Go in about 10 minutes and you'll get to the meat every day, delivered to your phone. Anyway, let's get on with it. First, I want to talk about this Heinz commercial. I've been trying to talk about this for literally months, but I got into the commercials for the Christmas holidays and all that stuff. So I'll read it to you because it's music playing, so I'll give you that, okay? It says, people love Heinz a lot. And then it shows a tattoo, a lot of tattoos. But when it has to be Heinz, it has to be just right. The Heinz tattoo label. And they made a label that's reversed so you can peel it off the bottle if you're good at that and put it on your skin and somehow transfer that ink to your skin and then start on the tattoo. Heinz love should never fade away. It has to be Heinz. Now, I do have my Mint Mobile. I'm not quite as committed to Mint Mobile as I am to ketchup. Well, it doesn't have to be Heinz, but I think we almost always buy Heinz. And it's, no regrets switching to Mint Mobile. I promised to do that last summer when I was wearing short sleeve shirts. I've got to do it. I mean, I've got to at least put on the tattoo stencil, right? And I'm not promising to get a tattoo with Ryan Reynolds. But let's get over to the story here. If this isn't love, what is? Heinz ketchup has some serious fans, serious enough to want an instantly recognizable logo tattooed on their body forever. Okay, and so they decided to do a Heinz tattoo label, a peelable label that doubles as a stencil that can be used by tattoo artists or anybody else who wants to do Heinz art, I suppose. When we found out there were people all over the world with Heinz tattoos, I did actually Google Heinz tattoo and found lots of pictures. We took one of our most distinctive brand assets, the label, and turned it into a way of celebrating and inspiring our fans' irrational love. Now, wouldn't this be a great way to find the customers who love you and get more like them, right? There's one, of course, differentiating feature. The ones who really, really like you and are willing to get a tattoo and have a Heinz tattoo. How do we find those? Well, in this case, they're offering a sweepstakes. So they're only creating 100 specially designed labels via the sweepstakes. Now, a contrast with that is that Mint Mobile sent this to me, no charge, for fun, in a mailer. Okay, I would suggest that this was a really wasted opportunity. At least give everybody who enters the sweepstakes one of the labels. You don't have to give them a bottle of ketchup, but at least give them the label. What is this? How much could this cost? Right, it costs nothing. My goodness. And then at least you could get data on who the tattooed fans were, where they lived, and see if it correlated with Heinz sales at all. This is the way you utilize data. But as I point out in my book, the I love you variable is notoriously elusive, right? It's not easy to figure out why some customers will buy from you 10 times a year and others, the vast majority, only buy from you once. Same product, same more or less demographic. Why do some people love it and some people not love it? It's really hard to say. Why do I love certain brands and not others? Land's End, as an example, is my Land's End. I like their elastic in their turtleneck. I can get a large turtleneck and also a nice neck that fits me. nothing else is any good. Nowhere else do I buy turtlenecks. That's because of their product, right? They also have good customer service. I sent back a sport coat that never was quite right, and they gave me full credit as far as they could tell, because it was like a decade since they'd offered that particular model. Okay, so I'm not advocating this, but I am saying that they missed an opportunity to identify the "I love you" fans. Would have been and maybe we should run it again, I would say. I called out Quad the other day after getting the news that they were closing their Sacramento plant, and a VP from Quad reached out to me yesterday. So I'm excited about the idea of chatting with them. As I said, I would meet even on my own expense, go to Sussex, Wisconsin, although this particular guy is in Minneapolis. Okay, so earlier in the week, Mark Ritson said, "Are we witnessing the end of the CMO? No, and stop asking." Okay, and I repositioned this a little bit so it would be more dramatic for him. He, right off the bat, references, he says, "No, they're not. Stop talking about this." I like this intro, though. "My New Year's resolution was to avoid reading U.S. business press because its marketing coverage is so hyper real and crap, it defies belief." Okay, but I was fiddling with my phone, and whammo, I stumbled upon Fortune's website and a downpour of cliched horseshit that soiled me. So there was an article about Fortune 500 companies eliminating the chief marketing officer roles as the position loses C-suite clout. And we heard on the flameless stove, or whatever it was called, that little stove was looked like a great stove gasification, and the Snoop Dogg commercial the other day. And I'm trying to remember the name of that stove, dang it. But the former CMO did connect with me at my invitation, and I haven't heard back what they thought of my comments about I think the CFO is taking over the marketing responsibilities, or the COO, or somebody like that. I'm not sure whether that it's a permanent thing that they're eliminating their CMO, or they just didn't like the results. I think it was the flat growth, which is kind of Ritson's point, okay? But he says the next day there was another article called "The CMOs Regaining the Faith of Their Bosses, Survey Shows." Okay? So Mark says, which is it? Here's Fortune saying the CMO role is dead. Forbes says the CMO role is revitalized. Well, it's two different magazines at least. First of all, this obsession with the CMO role is crazy, but there's so many marketing magazines and so many business magazines. It is crazy. The firing of the CEO tells us nothing except that they probably weren't very good at their job. Okay. And I would also like to note, back when I was learning about CFOs, when I was a VP of marketing, I don't think we even had a CFO or a CMO or even a CEO. I think we had a president and we had a couple of vice presidents. So, was I the CMO? Kind of, I guess, sort of, mostly. But anyway, I was the VP of marketing, and the VP of finance kept always teasing me because my projections were not quite on the button. I remember, I think I did the projections for about 10 years, and 6 of those years were plus or minus 5% for marketing for the year. That's pretty good. I think 3 or 4 of those years were plus or minus 2%. That's like dead on bullseye for marketing. But I was very threatened by that. I was hurt that I couldn't do better. And I kept working on making those projections better, and sometimes they were. But I think it was after I left, I realized that the CFO handles data from the past, handles already spent money, right? Mostly, and then decides what to spend more on. So the balance sheet always adds up, assets, liabilities, and the P&L always adds up, revenue, expenses, etc. So their numbers always work out, but they're shuffling an already dealt hand. What marketing is doing is betting the river, in a manner of speaking. We're trying to predict the future. So, of course, the CMO is a job that's it's much more difficult, even if you're good at marketing, right? Just to communicate that with the CFO and the CEO. Why aren't your numbers better? You know? And the irony, of course, in my career has been that if your numbers are great, they sell the company. If your numbers are terrible, they sell the company. Or they fire the CMO or whatever. But, it's a really, really difficult spot because the future is uncertain. No matter how much data you get, it's always historical. It's always easier working with historical data. So I want you to appreciate that, Mark. The other thing I want to call out here is that he says that this article says that the autonomous role of CMO is gone away. And this is the article. And I spent more time on this actually than the other because I thought it was a very good article. And it's just said that these 3 CMOs are fired. It didn't necessarily say that that they were redefining their company, though several did say they were going to get rid of CMOs. But the article went on and said it's not that the CMO roles are going the way of the dodo. Okay, the CMOs are still very present. In fact, 71% of Fortune 500 companies, that's a pretty good sample set, still have a chief marketing officer. It's down from 74%, but that's almost insignificant over 15 years, right? Okay. And Stephen Mayer, a professor of management at Columbia Business School, said, today's executive has to be much more of a generalist. So, and there's a bunch of stuff, but the fading, here's the firing of those three CMOs, Ritson says, was used as evidence of the fading of the prominence of marketing's prominence as an autonomous C-suite discipline. But that's not what they said. They said that it seemed to be fading, but it was probably evidence that CEOs have little marketing background themselves. Only 10% of Fortune 250s have any significant marketing experience, and only 4% of the Fortune 250 had a CMO-like role. 70% of Fortune 100 CEOs have operations or finance. Exactly what I've been saying. So this Fortune article is right on the button. Only 41 of the Fortune 1000 have a marketer on their board. Okay, it isn't that marketers are irrelevant. It's that finance runs the company, period. Finance runs companies. You want to be a CEO, right? You want to be a board of directors member? Don't be in marketing. I gave a talk once at one of the local colleges, and one of the kids asked, well, what's a career in marketing like? I said, you're never in charge of the money. You're always reporting to middle management, you're always treated as middle management. And that is true. And those few that have someone on the board are consumer brands like Best Buy, Mattel, Nike, Estee Lauder, and Crocs. Okay? Excellent article, actually. When people say is what this first thing says. When people say, oh, the CMO is being eliminated, it simply means a company has chosen to structure around the role in a different way, which is actually pretty much exactly, this is from Richard Sanderson, what Mark Ritson is saying. So to call out this article as stupid, I think is really, but McDonald's replaced their CMO. It turns out marketing chiefs might be essential after all. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if the CMO has that much meaning, but I do know, and I would like to take issue with Ritson here, that I think he misread the article. And then he spends a lot of time on CMO tenure and says, on average, this was funny. The average marketer has one testicle and one ovary. What does that tell you? There's a lot of men and women in marketing. Okay, so let's get over to something with real meat on it. This is from Jeff Tarran. I mentioned that I was going to talk about this yesterday, and he gave us a nifty, what can you test in direct mail? I'm going to make this bigger for myself. I don't think it'll change for you. And here are some of the conversation starters, and that's what we should say. Now, in 1987, fall of 1987, I remember it vividly because of two things. One, it was just days after the stock market fell 500 some points. Now it does it regularly, but in those days it was only at about 8,000 or something. So it was a 5% drop in one day, and when I got to New Orleans, where it was, there were many articles about how this could be the start of the Great Depression. Okay, it isn't new news for those of you youngsters who weren't even around in 1987, but one of the keynotes, Amy Africa, I think maybe, no, but someone with a catchy name, said that the economy had had a heart attack. Okay, and I had just started a new job, which was probably bad timing. It all worked out, but I remember worrying about that because my father had always said that sort of thing was going to happen. Still hasn't quite happened, but we've gone through some shocks. Anyway, I also got a hotel room in the French Quarter where the hot water didn't work right. You'd either be scalding or freezing, but on average it was comfortable. So here are some of the things, and I also gave a talk. Oh, that's right. I also gave a talk called What to Test When the Well Runs Dry. And what they wanted was this sort of thing. They wanted a list of all sorts of things that you can test. However, what I pointed out was that it depends on testing. It depends. What you want is something important, but not crucially important. You can hire a consultant to come in and say, are there any big things we're doing wrong? Best practices. I'm happy to do that. Or join the WDMA and we'll talk about your mailing pieces or something like that. But I'm happy to come in for a couple of days and look around, and those have always been very profitable for companies, and I do have a guarantee. So if you're not dazzled, I've never had to pay on that one. Then we'll refund the money except the travel expenses, because at least you've got to cover that. But anyway, you can hire somebody to come in and say, these things are ridiculous. Change them. Put a QR code on your mailing. Got this yesterday. Nice QR code. Okay, helps me respond. I'm going to respond to that probably this afternoon. Put a QR code on there. Okay, what else? Okay, make an offer. If there's no offer, I remember going into Oakley for one of these things. Oakley Sunglasses were going to try some mail. They wanted me to come in. I looked at their mailer, and there was no way to respond to it. None. And I handed it back to them and said, how would I buy these? It happened to be Kevlar tennis shoes, in case you want to shoot yourself in the foot. And they said, well, there's a phone number right here in the body copy. I said, no, that doesn't count. Sorry. So you don't want to test the obvious. You want to fix the obvious. Let's just fix some stuff. And I've had tests of creative go as much as 40% in my favor. So what's obvious to one is not necessarily obvious to someone else. So always happy to do that. I think that's a very, very excellent exercise. I've also heard of big financial companies who mail tens of millions of pieces, testing a green envelope versus a red. Now, I would say that is a trivial test, right? I would say. But on the other hand, when you're mailing tens of millions of pieces, Craig Huey had a test where he changed the button on the website from like next, something vague like that, to check out and pay or something with explicit, this is the next thing you want to do. And it was like 30% increase or a decrease in cart abandonment. You know, sometimes those what seems to be trivial can have more impact than you think. But in general, what you want is you want the things in the middle. Fix the obvious, you ignore the trivial, at least for a while. Now, when you've been testing for decades, you might want to test the pink versus the blue envelope. It was a reply envelope, I think, or an indicia versus a stamp, or handwritten versus machine written, or something like that. You know, there's a lot of things you can test. Format is one of the more difficult because you just can't take a 4x6 postcard and ram it into a number 10 envelope, right? You have to rethink it. And when you rethink it, you're going to be changing the creative. You might be changing the offer. You might be changing the response device. So it's very difficult to test format of a significant change. Okay, it's also expensive because you have to do two separate. If you want to control, you have to do two separate mailers at the same time. Might even be from two separate printers. Okay, and he doesn't have catalog in here, or mini, Slim Jim, or all kinds. There's all kinds, or three-dimensional. That isn't even, well, dimensional might be three-dimensional. Okay, in other words, a puffy, something like that. Okay, so formats are tricky. I put in magnet and business card at the bottom here. The most important thing is the list. And today, too many people are just going with their printers. In my opinion, I'm working with printers who do this, who say, well, we'll get the list. We'll get the list. And I ask them about the list, and it's just a big compiled list. You know, you want to test, yeah, sure, compiled list, because they have lots of things you can use for personalization. You can get the phone number, you can get the email address along with the street address. You can also select on a lot of this stuff. Okay, but oftentimes the interest level is more tied to the I love you variable than is the geodemographics. Oftentimes the geodemographics are pretty consistent across the board, you know, based on disposable income or net worth or something like that. So list to me should be on here and should almost always be tested. You should test response lists when you can get them, and you can almost always get them if you have a list and you can exchange. Most people will do that. And if you can't, give me a call, because I've done that for a lot of companies. Just call up a competitor and say, can we trade old names or something? And they go, well, yeah, sure. Of course we can. It's done in the nonprofits all the time. Also, publication lists, controlled circulation lists, especially in B2B, okay? But oftentimes after the list, then the offer is probably the next most important. And these other things, sometimes personalization, you know, we added a little message to all AT&T business names, and we got those rented names to perform equal to the hotline. In our catalog mailings long ago, but it was for a particular reason, and it worked extremely well. So sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. Anyway, thank you, Jeff, for that nifty list. Have a great day. Like and share. Your friends will know you're